Fantastic. And now this is the next track that is equally as cool. It is Metalmancy, also by Danny Baranovsky and Family Jewels 7X. Brilliant. I love that game, even though I've never played it. I just love the soundtrack. I could never understand the gameplay mechanics, but it is a very unique game, and it gives me like Enter the Gungeon vibes, and I really, really like Enter the Gungeon. And rhythm games in general, I have never really played a rhythm game that I did not like, and I think that will be this true for most people. They're just really fun. Now, I would like to talk about a really cool new, new exciting rumors that have started. Now, this is just a rumor, but the award-winning RPG by the studio that went on to make Cyberpunk 2077, The Witcher 3: Wild Hunt, might be getting a new DLC 10 years after its initial release. Now, this is just a rumor, but one with a reasonable amount of evidence behind it. The base information comes from a Polish culture news website called ppe.pl, Polish accent, where an exclusive interview with a member of the studio CD Projekt Red hinted at a new DLC being released sometime in May this year. At first, this is all the information we had, but after IGN Poland got a hold of the rumors, they decided to reveal that they also interviewed CD Projekt Red years back, where they told them that a potential expansion-sized DLC set in the desert region of Zerrikania, that's part of the Witcher universe, is likely to happen, and that it has been in development for quite some time. CD Projekt Red have not released any comments themselves on any of these rumors, but they are only gaining traction, and it's easy to see why, as the secret DLC is actually quite plausible when you think about it. Analysts have pointed out that CD Projekt Red haven't officially stated any releases for this year, which leaves a big gap between their next game in 2027, meaning releasing a DLC to keep bringing the money in and staying relevant is a smart move. And to tie it all in, the game coming out in 2027 is The Witcher 4, where Ciri, the main character's daughter, is the playable hero. In The Witcher 3, the previous main character's story has finished. Geralt of Rivia has retired at a wine orchard with Ciri setting out on the path to practice the Witcher trade anew instead. An expansion being published a year before the new game would not only bridge the two game stories so the transition to a new main lead is smoother and better received, but also keep The Witcher in the gaming community's minds long enough to hype up the release of the next installment in the series, boosting sales astronomically. At least that's from my analysis. But I think this is very exciting news. I have just started recently on a Witcher 3 playthrough once again, and that game released as a new gen or as a next gen improvement about 3 years ago. I mean, it's award winning, it's fantastic, so it had to be boosted for the newer audiences and newer generations. And it's two amazing DLCs, Hearts of Stone and Blood and Wine. I can't wait to try them out once again. I mean, it's a Polish rite of passage. If you play video games and are from Poland, you absolutely have to play Witcher 3 or Wiedźmin, how we say, because it is just that good. And the books are fantastic as well, I've heard. Not that I've read them because I have a massive backlog of books in order to get through. But regardless, it has been really fun to get into it once again, and I really can't wait, to be honest, because I think this is very likely, in my opinion, to be a new release. We have seen game developers do that before, actually, where they hold a game out, it seems like everything's finished, and then they have a new release coming up, and so they release a DLC in the previous game that was really well received, and that brings the hype up, that makes sales boosts, and that makes more like YouTubers comment on it, which generates hype. Like, this will happen. And it has happened before with Borderlands 2 and Borderlands 3. Gearbox Studios, when they were developing Borderlands 3, stopped all development on Borderlands 2, obviously, because it was a finished game. It was nothing to do with it. And then they announced that there was going to be a new DLC for that game a bit before, like a couple months before the release of Borderlands 3, or maybe even a year. I can't quite remember off the top of my head. But this worked exactly how you think it is. People who loved Borderlands 2 as a childhood game went back into it. They played through the new DLC. It bridged the two games together, so you understood the story better, and it was a smoother transition. And then Borderlands 3 came about, and a lot of people bought it. It was a success. Borderlands 3 was, and I can say that the story is a different thing. Story is another thing. But the gameplay was fantastic. So I'm really excited to get into maybe a new Witcher 3 expansion sometime this year. It is set to release in May, perchance, from what we've heard. But again, it's nothing official. CD Projekt Red has not commented on anything. They're being super secretive about these rumors. But I believe, personally, I want to believe that there will be another Witcher 3 DLC, because one of my favorite games. And speaking of games, let me give you guys another recommendation. And this time, I'm going to recommend quite a funny one, in my opinion. It's called Pizza Tower. Pizza Tower is a 2D platformer speedrunner kind of game where you run really fast. There's a chef called Peppino with a very charming and funny cartoon art style that is worth the money alone. And the story of it is a very, very, very short story synopsis. Peppino has a pizzeria. He gets like blown up by a giant floating pizza head, and he has to go climb his tower that's like a massive expansion. It's like a mad wizard's tower. While speeding along and running through stuff. The reason why this game is incredible, like, this isn't a very, it's a funny, it's like a cartoon story synopsis, but it owns up to it so well. It is so hilarious, and it really plays into like internet culture, like doing a lot of memes and funny poses. Like, the sprites are on purpose made so that you laugh as much as you enjoy playing it, which for me was a great deal. And also, the soundtrack for the game is very, very fun. Like, I love it so much. I can't describe what the guy is going to be doing next. I believe his name is Mr. Sauceman. as his developer name. Yeah, yes, that's his name, Mr. Sauceman. He's really, really playing into it. I'm not sure what his future plans are. I don't think there's gonna be a DLC for Pizza Tower later on in the year, like Witcher 3, but it has released for like 2 years now, released around 2 years ago. So I believe he probably is working on something else. I mean, he finished expanding on it. It's a finished game. Like he put in a side character mode. You can even play it multiplayer or sorry co-op now, which I believe is an official feature. I might have looked at it as a mod, but either way, it's really well performing. So it's lovely to play with a friend or two, switching the controllers and that. And I also wanted to say comment on the soundtrack, which is just really fantastic. I had a phase where in my studies I would listen to the soundtrack that would play when you're escaping a level, because as you're going through a level in Pizza Tower, you get to the end, you have to go through all these obstacles and stuff. You get to the end, you have to sprint back to the exit in order to escape before the timer runs out. And it is really, really accentuated by the soundtrack, which is just fast-paced and fantastic. And for some reason, it works on me when I'm studying, that if I put that song on loop while I'm studying, I focus really hard. And that is like the most brain rot thing I said, because that song isn't exactly like charming to listen to outside of those kinds of situations. But that might be different for you. And I wanted to play two songs once again from Mr. Sauceman on Spotify, with the first one being Thousand March, so that you get an idea of the vibe that he's trying to go for. Enjoy. Hope you guys have a better idea of what I mean now, but fantastic. It's just so good, the fast-paced songs. I mean, I like fast-paced stuff in general, but in a video game while you're doing stuff and running away while looking at the timer to make sure that you're not late is so good. And now I'm gonna play by Mr. Sauceman another song, this time regarding a boss battle from the game, and he's as ridiculous as his name is. This song is called Pepperman Strikes. What a brilliant game with what a brilliant soundtrack. The next story that I have for you guys is actually an interview, and I figured it was actually quite interesting. It is that the indie publisher Hooded Horse and his CEO of it, Tim Bender, who stated that indie developers should avoid indie publishers, which is strange as an indie publisher to say that. And he said this in an interview with PC Gamer earlier this week. He stated that, well, first of all, let me give you a bit of background. I think is more according to plan. But Hooded Horse have published success after success with examples such as Manor Lords and Terra Invicta. So this may seem like a hypocritical take indeed. Tim, however, isn't pulling some kind of smart move to make his company appear better than the others by shaming the industry. He in fact stated that he and his team won't be looking for any new developers to sign on anytime soon, and that they are aiming to keep a stable relationship with the developers they have now working on their current games, which he stresses throughout in the interview that ethical treatment of dev teams is a critical, so not promising growth here at all. Unbothered, Tim dropped a bombshell of statement by warning indie devs that most indie producers are actually predatory and opportunistic. Yes, he stated that that indie developers are looking to sign a bunch of games, invest in the ones that are otherwise successful, make them bigger, ignore and drop, basically abandon the ones that aren't, while sucking up whatever they can for recoup. And he stated that also they're not particularly competent, as most indie publishers don't add a lot, in his words. He recommends instead that self-publishing is the better way to go about things, even claiming that 95% of teams/persons who self-publish do it better than the professional indie publishers, which isn't far from the truth, seeing as some of the most staggeringly successful indie games out there were self-published. Like the adventure RPG Undertale by Toby Fox. That was self-published. And it was the same with Scott Cawthon with Five Nights at Freddy's. And I believe I could go up to a random person in the streets, say Five Nights at Freddy's at them, and there is at least a 30% chance that they will know what I am talking about because of how much they are ingrained within internet culture. They're almost unkillable, I'd wager. And I believe self-publishing is a risky maneuver. I mean, I followed games that have only the one dev working on them, and they work on these games for years. Like they are big, ambitious passion projects, and they only do it by themselves. They don't let anybody else touch them. I believe Dwarf Fortress, that is one of the longest games to ever just be kept on working on, and it's still in early access. I don't think it's released. It's been worked on for like 20 years now. I believe those are self-publishers, and the community that surrounds those folk absolutely love that game. And in terms of like Undertale, for example, that also became massive, at least for my generation, I believe. Everyone knew what Undertale was. It's a really good game in general, even outside of the fandom that surrounds it. And it's the same with Five Nights at Freddy's. Five Nights at Freddy's was so stupidly big. It was just a single horror game, and then it became a second one, a third one, and there's like a series, and there's a whole genre of Five Nights at Freddy's games now. There's a movie knockoff with Nicolas Cage where he just beats up the robots, and it's really funny and really good. It's just hilarious how him self-publishing that game turned into just all of this beautiful series and hilarious like thing to be known for in this culture, like for our generation to be known for. What do we entertain ourselves with? And it's Five Nights at Freddy's. But regarding self-publishing, I believe it is a very good way of doing things, in my opinion. And to recommend another thing, once again, I would like to talk about another game that I'd like you guys to try out. This time, I would like to talk about the Outlast Trials. Everyone knows Outlast is a very popular horror game, very good horror game, might I add. It is not for the faint of heart. I believe it had like a heart attack warning when you bought it back in the day. But they have a multiplayer version of that called the Outlast Trials. And it is horror multiplayer perfected. It is so good. It's set in like 1970s, when the Cold War happened. So like 1960s, 1950s. The Cold War, America. You are a homeless bum, and you are taken by, you're kidnapped by these folk after reading a flyer and like going, to check out maybe because they was promoting help. This flyer, you go on to check out like the place that I mentioned, and you get kidnapped and brought to this facility. They torture you and just constantly make you feel horrible, but you're actually in an experiment. You are referred to as a reagent. And what you do as a reagent is that you go into these trials, the Outlast Trials, you go into these trials, and you do these bizarre missions, such as sawing people open and hiding drugs within them, all to make you a better agent. This is basically a massive like psyop training you to become a sleeper agent, which is ridiculous, but there's heaps of lore into it, and really good comic books. If you search up the Outlast Trials comics, they are fantastic comics, I gotta say. And regarding the comics, they also speak about the prime assets. Those are the main baddies in the games. There's stuff like Leyland Coyle, who's a former KKK member, and who has a massive fascination with electricity, wearing full leather, like smoking a cigar and having like burn marks all over him. He has a massive like fantasy of being a cop, and he walks around and beats the hell out of you in like a prison-based like testing facility. And then there's Mother Gooseberry, who was her father's sidekick to her like dentistry show, and she organized a puppet show until her dad died. And when her dad died, she went crazy and started promoting more violent and obscene things to children, such as even killing their parents and running around causing havoc. And she was later put into a mental facility right up until the Outlast Trials organization that grabs you. I forgot the name of them, to be honest, but they grabbed her and put her in this facility, and you fight alongside, and you have to try and escape from her while doing these trials. I'm not sure what they add to it, but I do know that they only search for these prime assets that have a lot of charisma to them, and they are charismatic. And there's tons that have been added since. There's been two, or technically three, I guess. One of them are conjoined twins that are in an incestuous marriage with each other. It's freaky in the Outlast trials, but it is also very, very fun to play. They've released a bunch of new areas and maps and enemies to discover. There's a new mode where you can invade someone else's trial and try and hunt them down. They are doing a lot with that game, and it is very community driven. They interact with the community a lot. Beautiful story told by gameplay. I would heavily recommend that game. And now let me play you guys some new music, and I believe I'm gonna do a little cyberpunk motif. We're gonna do Friday Night Firefight by Aligns and Rubicones, which is a really good song when you're touring through Night City, I gotta say. Enjoy. I absolutely adore Cyberpunk's soundtrack, I gotta say. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Now, I have some exciting news because we're going to talk about one of the most popular games probably nowadays, and it is Arc Raiders, of course. We have a new roadmap called Escalation this time from January till April, with these all updates linked together. Something to do with the weather, I believe, like a bit of a climate change scenario within Arc Raiders universe. And today we have in January, or in this month, I mean, we have Headwinds update, which has just released actually on Tuesday. We have a new matchmaking option for those of you who play a lot and are level 40 plus. You guys can go now solo versus squads and try and be Batman while walking around and laying traps everywhere, I imagine. Pretty fun. And there's also a new minor map condition to do with birds flocking around the buried city map, the one that's like covered in sand. There's like a bunch of nests filled with valuables and birds everywhere, so you can't walk around without being seen or heard, definitely heard. And it is very, very fun to play. I've had a few attempts at it. Did not get far, unfortunately, but maybe you guys will do better. There's a new player project as well with trophy hunting, which has some amazing rewards. You can get a Bobcat blueprint, but that is after you kill 3 queens, or at least get 3 queen reactors. And a Phalion and a kinetic converter. A lot of stuff for the taking, for the grabs. I quite like it. It's like another long-term goal, which, seeing as I don't do Expedition until they fix some of the issues with it or make it more, I don't know, enticing, I'll probably be doing that instead. Now, next month, February, we have Shrouded Sky as the next update, and we have another map condition, this time with the icon of, like, blowing wind, which I imagine is going to be, like, another storm condition, maybe something to do with, like, if you're outside, you might get pushed around, or it might be difficult for flying arcs to maneuver, which actually we're going to get also another new arc threat, which seems to be flying, along with the one next month, which I'll talk about in a second. The expedition window will open for those who are doing their expedition, so keep on finding those screws that you need. A couple metal scraps that you guys still need to put into there. There'll be a map update. I'm not sure what that means. I don't even know which map it would be. Can't say. Maybe the dam. Maybe Dam Battlegrounds. There'll be a new Raider deck. Finally, I've been waiting. I finished the other one in like 2 seconds, I'm not going to lie. And another player project. And next month, March, we'll have the Flashpoint update. This time, another map condition, of course. This time, it is a lightning icon, which we already have a lightning storm. So I want to say, if it was like Stella Montes, but blackout, where it's pitch black, I think that'd be so fun. It would be so fun. I love pitch black stuff like that. We have to sneak around and make sure nobody's hunting you down. And there'll be another arc threat, so another new enemy. This time also seems like they're flying, at least I think. Another player project with the sign of a communications array tower, which is interesting. Scrappy or Chicken will be updated. And then we will wrap it up in April with Riven Tides, which will consist of a new map. And it has a beach icon, and so it's going to be a coastal map, which is interesting. I hope there's going to be something to do with swimming. Imagine if we could swim around and have underwater combat. And there'll be a new large arc, which would be so sick if it's like a giant shark megalodon, because that would be awesome. Or like a crab or something. I don't know. Actually, we have enough crabs. I don't know. Maybe a fish or some shit. And there'll be a new map condition with what seems to be a tornado coming down from the skies. I love tornadoes. Or I don't love them, but I'm deeply fascinated by them. I think I have like a grim fascination with them because they look, it's just so awestruck when you look at a tornado, even on recording. It's just this massive pillar from the heavens going down and tearing apart everything. It's like a finger of God, if I believed in them. But anyways, there's also another expedition window happening, and this time the expedition window icon looks a bit different. So I'm excited to see how that looks. And alongside all of these updates, there will be new quests, new feats, trials and events, new gameplay items, new cosmetics, and quality of life updates. And I wanted to quickly talk about another little news piece that I saw briefly before I go on to the radio show, and it's to do with the co-developer of the Chinese Room studio. I believe their name is Curry, actually. Yes, their name is Curry. Yes, Jessica Curry. They were in an interview with Radio 4's Women's Hour on January 28th, and they talked about how it is still extraordinarily hard for women to perform well within the games industry due to scrutiny and bigotry. She said that it's really broken her in a lot of ways, and that there's still resistance to any form of difference within the industry, and it's very protective of its roots, which were like male and white, of course, culprits all the time. But she would like to say that it's changing, but she's also not sure that it is. And I think I share the same feeling, to be honest. I'd like to say that it has changed. I'd like to say it has changed for the better. I mean, it's definitely better 20 years ago, but you can't just compare that and get rid of the problem. But I just find it ridiculous that people still bother about like gender or racial stuff when it comes to games industry, because we've seen so many good games made by women, like for example the Uncharted series. Those were completely developed and head developed and directed by Amy Taylor, I believe her name is. And those were fantastic games, beautiful adventure games. I mean, everyone who owned a PlayStation loved them. And also Valve's Portal was the lead game designer for that was a woman, and also the level designer, same woman, was a level designer for Left 4 Dead 2, and those were fantastic games that created a whole new genres, especially Left 4 Dead 2, and they made horde shooters essentially. And I wish that there would be some changes to that, for the better, but it seems that there's more work to do, and I would encourage you to look up projects made by women, see which ones appeal to you, and try them out, as I hope to do so in the future as well. And the Chinese Room itself, the developing studio, is not doing too good, unfortunately. They did release a couple of good games, such as Dear Esther. That was a nice story-based game, but they recently released, they were behind the Vampire Masquerade 2 sequel, which was not satisfying, to say the least. It did not satisfy the fans. It was very different from what they thought they were getting, and it was very bare bones. It is a nice game if you don't really know much about World of Darkness, the universe that's the game set in, or the previous game. It's a fine game, but it shouldn't have been called Vampire the Masquerade 2. That's my take on it. Now, that's all the news got for today, I believe. Yeah, that's everything I can say. For another recommendation, I'd say check out V Rising if we're while we're talking about vampires. It's a top-down RPG, but also a survival game. Very fun. I loved playing it. You get to go around, and there's a day and night cycle, so you have to make sure you stick in the shadows, and the very dynamic shadows. You have to actually walk around as the sun, because the sun will move the shadows as it goes around day, which sounds simple. Obviously it would do that, but you would be surprised. And the lore is actually quite interesting. The combat is good, slashing around with the weapons you made. You cast spells, augment them with jewels. Then there's boss battles. You can do boss battles in the survival game. That's actually the main way you progress, is that you fight bosses and then you suck their blood at the end of it in order to gain their power and unlock schematics and stuff to build back at your base. And the dev team is the patient kind, where they release a huge update, and it's amazing and it's fantastic. The game did have one post-launch update, and it's a huge game, to be honest. You've got hours worth of content in there. And then they disappear for a year or two before they make a couple announcements and be like, oh, we've got this huge update coming on next. I believe they're still working on something new, maybe a frosty winter region, which we already do, but it could be expanded on. And yeah, I would really heavily recommend V Rising. If you like survival games or RPGs, I believe this will be very fun. And I've played it with friends or without friends. Keep in mind, it is a mainly multiplayer game, so there'll be people that might want to grief you, but there's settings like having a peaceful server where everybody just helps each other out, or you can even play single player or just with friends. And I've tried all those systems, and I personally prefer the hard mode PvP combat. I think that's the way the game should be played, and I think as long as you remember that it's just a game, and the items it's not your items, it's just your turn with them, which is why I say to myself before I go on another raid in Arc Raiders, you'll have a grand time with it. And that's all the time that we've got for today, guys. So I'm going to thank you all, new or old, who has been listening. Even if you listened for just a minute or so, that's still fantastic, and I appreciate that. We're gonna be here same time next week, and it's gonna be a lovely time. We're gonna go back to like normal broadcasting. I'm gonna try and figure out what else to talk about on the show apart from your regular news. Maybe I'll think of putting in some segments or some extra segments. I quite like the indie game one I did last year, so I might be highlighting more indie games this year because Lord knows they are always seem to generally do better than the AAA stuff nowadays. But yeah, it was lovely to have you guys. I'm gonna leave you with Armor Clad Faith by Naoki and Arc System Works, once again from Guilty Gear. You guys know I love Guilty Gear. It's a fantastic game with an even better soundtrack. And yeah, listen in next time. And this was Game Jam. And listen to the radio show that's coming on next. I haven't had the pleasure of listening it to myself, but I'm going to stick around and make sure I read about it. It seems quite interesting, is all I'll say. Enjoy. This was Game Jam.